Hello and welcome to another episode of Flower Breeding. In this episode, we'll talk about pelargoniums. Pelargoniums are part of the geranium family and were once considered part of the genus Geranium, and so in the past were called geranium, and the name stuck, but their actual genus is Pelargonium. There are 6 groups of pelargoniums in a horticultural sense: the angel type, the ivy leaf type, the regal or Martha Washington type, the scented leaf type, the unique type, and the zonal type. The zonal types are split into subgroups, depending on the shape of the blossom: cactus, double, semi-double, fancy-leaved, and formosum hybrids, as well as several other varieties. Although the Pelargonium zonal is a foundation stock for this cultivar group, the zonal pelargoniums have been hybridized with many different species over the years, allowing for greater flexibility in what you want to breed. Now onto the history of the pelargonium. Based on the work of Harry Butterfield, Pelargonium inquirinus, Pelargonium hybridum, and Pelargonium fruturium are in its ancestry in terms of the zonal hybrids. The regal group is mostly unknown, but at least 2 species, Pelargonium culophotum and Pelargonium grandiflorum, are part of its lineage. It is speculated that Pelargonium fugidum was also used in its breeding. There's also a long litany of Pelargonium species that arrived into Europe over the years, some of which you can see on the image on the screen. Pelargoniums are native to Cape of Good Hope in the Dutch colony of South Africa. They first came to Europe through the Netherlands via the Dutch East India Trade Company, specifically the physician Dr. Paul Herman. This individual was among the first to build heated greenhouses to care for exotic and tender species arriving to Europe, and drew engravings of each and every plant he collected. Another species called Pelargonium triste arrived in 1632 in the hands of John Trestident. It became part of regular cultivation through his brother, a nurseryman. In later years, various other species came over, including Pelargonium zonal, which became the foundation to a great many cultivars of pelargonium. Although a great many species came over to Europe, very few were used in hybridization, and encompassed in the early years only greenhouse and show plant, no bedding plants involved. Now onto some plant breeders of pelargonium. Up until Robert Sweet, all hybridizations were the result of spontaneous crossing between various species. Mr. Sweet was amongst the very first to pollinate one species with another, deliberately. He was a Devonshire man, trained by David Stewart, an expert in plant propagation. He later became a foreman for James Corville's successful nursery in London. Mr. Stewart would eventually write 5 volumes talking about the geranium family. Mr. Sweet then crossbred many species of pelargonium in the collection of his nursery boss to breed new hybrids. These new hybrids obtained great interest but also a bit of anger from one of his rivals, William Ayton, who got his own back by hiding stolen flowers within Sweet's workshop. Although he did not get arrested for this, the reputation blow did leave him in poverty, and so he died at the age of 50. But his early work in hybridization remained. The next breeder on our hit list will be Richard Colt Hors. Like Mr. Sweet, he was amongst the first to crossbreed different species together. He made a great deal of crosses using Pelargonium fugidum to breed new hybrid varieties of geranium. One of his biggest crossbreeds was a cross between Pelargonium fugidum and Pelargonium ingescens. The resulting hybrid had black in its petals with a mostly scarlet flower, and was used as a parent for many more hybrids. Now on to some French breeders. Victor Lamon, who I mentioned as a lilac breeder in a previous video, also bred quite a few pelargoniums, breeding the varieties Butte de Sorzens, Gloire de Nancy, and Paul Cramble, the latter of which remains in commerce due to its rich red flower. Much of his work was paving the way for transforming the pelargonium into a bedding plant. The next hybridizer is John Sisley, creating the first double white pelargonium. He crossbred a single white with a double red, and learned that white was dominant. This knowledge became the basis of many new cultivars, such as the one seen on. Now on to our final set of breeders. These are the individuals that play a major role in improving the cultivated varieties. Our first hybridizer goes to Peter Grieve, who lived from 1812 to 1895. He was the gardener to the Earl of Lanesborough, and later on to Edward Richard Bingham of Culford Hall. He is credited of creating the first known tricolor variety of Pelargonium. These are varieties with ornamental and variegated leaves. Utilizing some mutations he found, he bred multiple cultivars such as Grand Prix, Tango, Rio, Jean Helena, and many others. Now on to another breeder, Wilhelm Esler. This individual worked on zonals in Dresden during the period of the East German isolation. Upon Germany being reunified, these varieties became better known. These new varieties were the first to be grown very easily in cultivation, the first to be easily propagated by commercial producers, and the first to bloom for long periods of time. The firm was initially founded in 1889 in Dresden by Wilhelm Esler's grandfather, and by 1923, they began concentrating on Pelargoniums. They were among the first to propagate plants via tissue culture and meristem culture, as well as applying heat treatment to prevent fungal infections. You can see the cultivars he bred on screen right now. The Communist government of East Germany confiscated Esler's business in 1972, keeping Wilhelm on as a manager, similar to what happened in Hagues and Erfurt. In 1990, after the reunification of Germany, the business was restored to its rightful owner. Thanks to communists failing, as they often do, the business continued to grow and produce even more hybrids of great quality. And now on to our final breeder, a Mr. Ernst Walters. His day job was an industrial relations officer in engineering by day, and a Pelargonium breeder by night. He primarily focused on breeding the regal type of Pelargonium using Pelargonium crispum and Pelargonium quercifolium, among others, in his breeding project. Using the two cultivars, Carisbrooke and Prince William, as a base. Like Mr. Esler, his goal is to make these plants produce more flowers, grow more vigorous, and be more tough in the face of adversity. Over time, he kept on crossbreeding, adding new hybrids into his mix, such as Lady Mary Fox and Miss J. Douglas. This resulted in the creation of 3 different types of series of regal geraniums: Tudor regals, Royal regals, and Romani regals, some of which flower perpetually, others would flower only 7 or 8 months out of the year. The stems were much stronger than previous hybrids, and so the flowers could be held up much easier. The science behind these perpetual flowering varieties were through the discovery of day-neutral cultivars made by Mr. Walters. Another major project was his breeding of a large dumbbell-shaped blossom Pelargonium with scented leaves by crossbreeding a three-way cross of Pelargonium domesticum, Pelargonium crispum, and Pelargonium quercifolium, and he succeeded. And that concludes our video. Thank you for watching.